Welcome to the Bold Claims Podcast with your hosts, Matt Danskin, Daniel Robosky, and Taylor Ammons.
Welcome to the Bold Claims Podcast, brought to you by the Building Experts Institute. My name is Matt Danskin. We've got Daniel Robosky, Taylor Ammons, and a special guest, Cam Wade, on the podcast with us. Today, we're going to be talking about some interesting things around learning from adjusters, as well as how claims are getting documented. We're going to watch an interesting video on roof safety for metal roofs and check out some tools that we've got. Let's go ahead and get started. Join the conversation with us. What I've got on here for our kind of main topic is kind of the good and the bad about learning from carrier adjusters and TPAs.
Oh.
And I would put
TPA.
with that. What's that?
I said TPA.
Third party adjusters.
Oh.
And I would put with that also even just like MRPs, and there are things I've learned a lot from when I did MRPs years and years ago. Some good, some bad, but
I think that's changed so much though, man. Like that's where I learned most of my meat and potatoes as a roofer. It was from the adjusters, but that I would say that really changed. Really, COVID is. I think they utilized COVID as like their
catalyst,
to just flip flop everything. That's where they stopped sending the red shirt State Farm carrier guys. They started sending all the gray shirt guys they hired.
Yeah.
They didn't know what they were doing at all, and because that used to be my number one thing as a roofer, would be asking them like, so what does State Farm call damage? Can you show me? Now they're like so hush up, they don't say anything, or they don't even know what they're doing.
Well, and I think some of that's been these very aggressive social media posts of like arguing with these guys on the roofs. While I get the intent, right, I think it's been counterproductive. I think it did something initially but it's like, okay, well now we can see that these things are happening. But I think now it's like if I'm a carrier adjuster, I'm not. You can stay on the ground. I don't need you up here.
Yep.
Like,
because it's almost like they don't even care about the actual damage as much as what can I get to show up on a photo. Because I had a meeting with State Farm one time, and the adjuster, was like, he's like, dude, I know that there's hail damage here, but I've got to get a photo of it to show the desk. And that's so frustrating because I'm like, dude, I can pull any of these shingles back here and we can take a picture of the fracture to the mat. I'm like, it beat this roof up. Like the hail reports say 1.25 inch hail fell for 20 minutes.
that's a long time.
It was incredible, and then the carrier's position was normal wear and tear denied, so it's definitely frustrating. It goes back to training.
I miss the times where they could just write a check in the driveway.
Oh yeah, get
Those
their
guys
van.
had
That happened to me about a year ago and just was random, but was so cool because I was like, man, I haven't seen that van pull up in a while.
Yeah.
Because used to be
That's
you
an
could
OG.
just hang out on site with your customer and 20 minutes later have a check and a scope of work and go ahead and ink them up.
He'd go in there and write an Xactimate and write you a check, at least the ACV. Man.
Yeah.
So we used to hit him with that. Be like, how much can you write for, boss?
Yeah, 20 grand.
All right, cool.
I had when I was working in Denver, I got a referral to this guy in Pueblo, which is 2 hours away. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to go. Like, all right, I'll go because it's a referral, and got to talking to the guy on the phone. He's like, yeah, my neighbor needs a roof too. He got sent. I was like, awesome, 2 for that can make my trip worthwhile. And ended up finding out they both had Safeco, and they both got assigned the same adjuster, and called the adjuster, and I was like, hey, I'm working on both of these. Do you want to go ahead and just meet up at both of them at the same time? So I had the one trip down to go do my inspections, talked with the adjuster, one trip down for both adjuster meetings. He stroked a check for both of them in the van before we left.
Oh yeah.
And then I didn't even go for my build. I just sent the crew.
I probably wouldn't have either.
But that's 2 hours. That's 8 hours in. That adds up real quick.
Yeah, it's not a bad hourly rate on your
Yeah,
money either.
Yeah, and they were T-locks. So
Man, those are nice to see those still.
Yeah, I think
in
that's
the
probably
wild.
the last two T-locks I ever did.
I haven't been on one of those yet.
You still see some in Colorado. I saw some last year when I was there. Like T-lock. There's a whole neighborhood full of them.
They seem like an interesting product the way that, because to my understanding, they ultimately like interlock together.
Yeah. I mean, the wind
product.
resistance is mechanical instead of just that chemical fastening.
Yeah.
So I think there's something to that, but at the same time, they realized that it was cascading failure. If there is a problem, it's not as modular of a system to be able to get in and repair it or do anything with it, which is that's a whole
like
other
metal lap
conversation.
siding.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to like the guys that used to teach, like you just don't, for one, see the older guys that would always be, the kind of the icebreaker, like conversation starters, like, so how long you been at this? And they'd be like, oh, dang, son, I've been doing this 17 years. Like, really? With State Farm? Like, oh yeah. And you would just learn so much. They were like the coolest guys.
But they pushed a lot of those guys out.
Yeah, exactly. They
So
pushed them
because-
out, or
because
their
they got
moral
too expensive.
compass. Yeah.
Or their moral compass.
Well, because they were doing
made
the
them
right
walk away.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it got to a point where these EGAs were getting paid a lot, and they were like, I can cycle him out, bring in a new guy that I can pay half or a quarter of what I've been paying this guy. And they started cycling those guys out. And I think all of that happened, like you said, right about COVID. But UPPA got heavy then. So like the carrier and the governance of all of our shit got real strict 2019, 2020. And a lot of those things went away.
Yeah, it's sad. And yeah, because what we're just talking about is you could wait for the State Farm guy to be in the back of his van and come out and he's going to write you the ACV, sometimes the full thing. And so you could see that, like, well, dang, it didn't take him very long to get the estimate together, the scope, all that, whereas now it's like you're waiting a month.
Right.
Just to get the initial, like, oh, we're still waiting on the adjuster's report. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not.
Because we changed adjusters 3 times and that guy's on vacation.
Right.
Yeah.
I got one recently for a claim in Ohio that they kept doing that. They're like, we're waiting on the engineer report. Engineer waiting. And then when they sent it to me December 21st. It was dated November 2nd. And I was like, you guys have had this the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, so for almost 60 days, you guys have been sitting on here. And I said, so I'm going to assume that you're trying to find a way to use this engineer report to deny the claim. Just go ahead and deny it so we can keep this thing moving.
Yeah.
And that's what they ended up doing. They ended up denying it. And then I ended up bringing an attorney in on it because at that point it's a large commercial claim. And it's not going to, but.
Yeah. We had, let's say last year in Arizona, I had met with this EGA twice. Jules and I, he even took Jules and I out to dinner. We became that close on, pretty large, multi-million-dollar claim out there. And he'd been at it forever. Is very well known in the industry. And he was just having almost a conflict up there. Like, he's like, Cam, I'm telling you, I'm done with this, because these were black and white, should have been paid for right out of the gate. And they were just playing, the adjuster revolver, but he was trying to fight. He's like, I'm staying in it because I got one more daughter to pay for college. And every time when he's trying to offload and be like, I'm done, they're like, well, just stay a little bit longer and work these, like, we've got these claims. But he's giving me a little insight. So as far as like the good, bad, and the ugly, and learning from them now, I do on the larger claims from the old school guys that are open to talk. They're like, they know, like, hey, they're close to 60 and they're going to be retiring anyway. Just like, yeah, Cam, there's not much I can do. I'm going to write my report. I'd even tell them, I'm going to be taking pictures of you taking pictures of the damage.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a little picture here. So that way, if that one doesn't, I draw arrows. Sometimes I draw goofy stuff on there that's not meant for TV, but people are like, you didn't see that? Why did that not end up in the report? But it ended up because of like little breadcrumbs he left. It was like his little homage. We still keep in touch. He's out of Louisiana really good dude. But yeah, he was just like, man, Cam, what is here and what's coming. It's like, he's like, it's out of my hands. He's like, it's beyond my moral compass, and I just gotta wait till my daughter's out of college and I'm out of here. He's like, I may come work for you.
Did you watch on Mulholland's documentation course? He actually has, a lot of it is for contractors and public adjusters and people that are on the policyholder side, but he actually addresses, for the IAs, for the people that are on the carrier side. Like, if you're seeing this and you start to learn what's going to happen to your report, what's going to, how they're going to misinterpret this or, do something that that there's damage, but maybe it doesn't document well or whatever, like what you can do to document that so that essentially you have a clear conscience. Like, you give them every possible chance to do the right thing on it. Does that mean they're going to? Not necessarily, but also trying to do it in a way where they're not necessarily going to get in trouble. Because that is a big thing of just them having to, they told me to do it this way, because one time they got sued when someone, actually documented the damage and then we denied it. Or
Right. Yeah, because I think that every roofer, contractor, PA, whoever should have some sort of formal process for how they approach their adjuster meetings. Because I know with me personally, I like to get out there a few minutes early. Depending on the extent of the damages, I may get up there and put a few little small marks next to what I'm saying is hail damage or what I'm saying is wind damage. And then when the adjuster gets there, I always like to just have a little quick get together and let him know, hey man, I'm not here to give you a hard time. I'm here to make sure I can support the client and answer any roofing related questions you have. They're aware of their role and they're available to answer any questions related to their policy or coverage or whatever. I'm only here to show you what I found during my assessment and make sure your ladder doesn't fall. Do you want me to show you on the roof, or do you just want to review the photo files in my phone? Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to go up there and do your own assessment of the property, and then I'm just going to compare and contrast what you found with what I found. And then those adjusters will usually say like, no, you can come up with me or something like that. And then I always want to ask that just because I don't want to come off as combative, and then I want to make sure that I can kind of nurture the ego of the adjuster a little bit, because they want to feel important most of the time too. So, it's all in the process and building the rapport. But then when you actually get on the roof, to your point, open up a dialogue and just have a conversation, let them know that you're a person as well. But if it's somebody that's been in, doing adjusting work for 15 or 20 years, then 100% you should always be, hey man, I've only been doing this for 6 months or a year or 3 months. I stayed new for 3 years. When I would meet with adjusters, hey man, I'm new. Damage looks pretty cut and dry based off my training. I've got damage on front right slope. There's a little bit of stuff on the back. I didn't see much on the left. You may. With the amount of experience do you have, are you opposed to me tagging along and you coach me on some of the stuff you're seeing? Because they love that. Or most of them do. Right. Let me preface. Because they're like, oh man, I get to run the show, and then you can ask those open-ended questions when he's like, this is what I'm looking for hail. Cool. What I see you touching it. What is it exactly that you're doing? But the whole time, at least in Tennessee, one-party recording state. So let your audio roll. That way you can run it through. And with AI now, you can just have it, applaud or something like that. Check all your local laws for sure. But then we can start to put together a summary of how this adjuster meeting went. We can explain to the homeowner what the adjuster was saying. Or if you know that this adjuster's up there and you can tell there's some bullcrap coming out of his mouth, maybe it's time to go ahead and get down and go, hey man, I'm going to go have a conversation with the homeowner real quick. You keep doing your thing. He doesn't have to know that you're going to go down there and say, you may want to send an email to the adjuster and explain to them that you don't feel like you're getting a very fair assessment of the property here, because the adjuster is walking right past just obvious damage. So I can't help but think there's, either a secret agenda here or a competency issue. Either one is not fair to you. And I want to make sure that you're working this file, because I think that's what the contractor's there for during the adjuster meeting, is to be able to just relay that message over to the homeowner and be like, how do you want to proceed? What documentation do you need?
Well, and I think I want to get Cam's impression on this, because you do so much in terms of meeting with adjusters and engineers on these claims. And presumably you're doing your preliminary inspection before that ever happens most of the time, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, from your standpoint, and not as a contractor, but as a claims professional, I know that, kind of takes different forms. What are your thoughts in terms of how that gets documented? What relevance is there to you being there and your involvement in the adjustment from the...
Well, like we talked about it earlier, like things have changed so much from how they're communicating. I was just, because there's sometimes, I'm taking the contractor's initial photo report and, identifying, yes, this is indeed damage. Yes, it's correlating with storm dates and with policy, if we can get the full policy up front. And depending on where it's at, I'm, flying out, driving out, going and getting my photo documentation, sometimes before the engineer's getting there or the adjuster. But sometimes, and a lot of times, it can be at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I've got my company cam file out, and I'm documenting and I'm communicating. Hey, let's look at this over here. What are your thoughts? And I just had one of probably the weirdest ones. And back to what you're saying, and one thing I picked up doing the Defeating Unethical Engineers course that Mulholland has, that you guys have.
Great training.
I really love it, and in fact, I'll set it up on my iPad, and just while I'm getting ready, it doesn't matter what state I'm in, when I'm getting ready, it's like I'm playing it, and I'm listening to the Bearded Dragon as I'm getting ready, and just reiterating things, because I can lose my track of thought if I don't have my template in front of me to follow. I can get lost in the sauce because I'm a talker. I'm a relationship guy, and so when I'm there, it's like you were saying, like I'm trying to record as much as possible and get them out of their defensive mechanism and putting up that wall. Them saying like, yeah, I've got a motive that I want you to spill the beans. I want you to contradict yourself from that initial, when we first get, before we even get on the roof, asking the engineer, so what's your mission today? What is your marching orders? What do they have you here to do? And sometimes they'll be real closed-lipped. I'm just here, show me what you're concerned about. I just had one at church in Oklahoma. The adjuster told me, show me what you're concerned about. And I told him, I was like, well, I'm concerned about right there what you just said. If you don't know what I'm concerned about on this roof that had 4-inch hell, and every square inch, every rib is just demolished, it's like, that is worrying me. So is this how we're starting, bud? I was like, because you should be able to get up there, right? You're a professional, and you should be able to tell me what I'm concerned about. Let's go be concerned together.
I've already expressed my concerns to the carrier, and they brought you out. So
again, same, and they try. And that's another thing too that we try to stop in the beginning is you're sending you're sending the same engineer? No, we are demanding a different engineer. That's like having someone coming out and grade their own homework.
Yeah, we do that with adjusters as well.
Yeah,
right? Like if I want to reinspect, and you send me the same guy that came out the first time, I'm like,
that's so annoying.
No. We're not going to get a different result here at all.
I would just tell him I charge for my training, so if you need me to train him, that's a different thing.
Yeah. And I was trying to go through and look, because I have a template somewhere that I recently created, because I want to start having my team, and I think it's going to be beneficial, send an expectation email to the carrier prior to that adjuster meeting, kind of reiterating what was claimed and what they or how they expect the meeting to go. And then they say, hey, I'm going to be present and I will be doing X. My contractor will be present. His role is to do Y, and you're going to be present. And I expect, according to my policy, this is what we're going to have. And it's ultimately just laying the expectation that I understand that I'm owed a fair investigation of the claimed property. And so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, that that's what we're intending to do.
Well, I think right there, though, there's a really important step that 95% of contractors that I talk to are completely missing, which is the claimed property, like the claimed loss.
Correct.
Right? Nothing has been claimed. Do you think if you called an 800 number and said, hey, we had a hailstorm, send somebody out, you have not claimed anything. You've not proven anything. And so I think it is really critical that up front there is some claim has been made, and whether you've attached a dollar amount to that or not, that is so critical. And so I think if you don't do that step, the policyholder hasn't fulfilled their duties. And for them to go, hey, I've got all these expectations from you, they go, well, cool, I don't actually have to do any of this because you haven't done your duties on your side. And they're not going to say all that. But that's ultimately how it's going to play out.
But language interpretation in the policy does that. It guides them through that. And that's something that you wouldn't expect contractors to know necessarily. But the homeowners are doing a disservice to themselves unknowingly by not substantiating their own loss. Because if the more that they can front load those claims, the more the burden of proof lies on the carrier, not 100%. Them. Right. And so if they're checking all these boxes, like we had an event, that is considered a covered peril. I'm showing you that weather data may say that it was within 3 to 5 miles, but here's the hailstones on my driveway or on my house or my car's dented or whatever. The more information that they can front load into validating the claim shifts the burden of proof to the carrier to say, well, no, you're wrong. Then it becomes the prove me wrong game, right? And you're always at an advantage if you leverage it that way. But they don't. They just go, hey, I got a hailstorm. To your point, hey, I got a hailstorm. They just show up, and all of a sudden the carrier goes,
tell me how much it's worth. You tell me what the method of repair is. You tell me all the things that I'm supposed to know.
The more you can front load these things, the better. But it has to be valid and accurate stuff, though, too. And that's the issue. I would give it this caveat, though. I think a lot of contractors go, hey, I'm not going to do that because I'm not a public adjuster. I can't interpret this policy. I can't apply coverage, all that sort of stuff, which I say totally fine. What you can do, though, is you can substantiate this event did happen. I don't know if you have coverage for it or not. Correct.
But this hailstorm did happen. This is what caused damage to this property. And here is, as a contractor, how this property could be repaired. And this is how much it would cost to repair this. I don't know whether or not you have coverage for that, but I can do all those things.
I would argue validating a covered event isn't interpreting policy.
Exactly.
Right. And what I mean by that is I don't, the dollar amount to repair it to me is irrelevant. You have to check those boxes. You have to say, is this one of the covered perils? Because they're standard, right? Now there's special cases, there's special use cases, and there's special forms and all that, but there's the standard covered perils.
Well, in terms of coverage, I mean, like they may have a $5,000 hail and wind deductible. Okay. I don't know that stuff. It's not for me to necessarily say, but I can say a hailstorm happened.
All I was saying was that without substantiating the claim in the first place, all the rest of that's irrelevant. Right. And so if I come back and say, a nuclear bomb hit my stuff, and in most policies that's excluded, right?
Sure.
Cool. Nothing else post that matters, right?
Yeah.
Earthquake, sure. Volcano, no. Right, like it just depends on what it is. There's the general covered perils, so hail, wind, hurricane, flood, all those junk. Like if you can't substantiate that initially, the rest of it doesn't. The coverage doesn't matter. And from a contractor's perspective, it shouldn't matter anyway, because if I'm selling that in quotes, and it gets to a point where we find out they have a roof payment schedule or a shitty ACV policy or whatever, cool, I'm flipping it to retail and I'm going to keep moving down the street, right?
Yeah.
So in the normal course of you validating a loss and deciding if it's something that you as the contractor want to take on, add in 1 or 2 small steps to help the claim process along if that was the case, is I think the overall point I was trying to make. So, I think we're talking about the same thing, just in different portion or different part of the face.
And I think one thing that may concern contractors is because they're so used to the process of, I knock the door or I run the appointment, I do the inspection, I find damage, we call it into the 800 number, we get the service agreement signed, and they call me when the adjuster meeting is getting ready to happen. And so that's normally the process that the contractors are going to work. But, getting an actual process settled in where you are documenting and helping prove that prior to the claim being filed is extremely beneficial. But I know that it can scare contractors because they want to get something inked right then. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with getting something inked right then, because what we personally do is it's a service agreement giving us permission to go ahead and start compiling all of this documentation, and that they are intending to move forward and involve their insurance company. So what they're hiring us to do is help them prepare their documentation.
Right.
So in the event that they decide to not move forward with a claim, or they discover that they don't have a full replacement cost policy, then they can simply flip retail, or they can pay us $350 for a documentation prep fee, and they can go shop.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to lock people in and force them to pay me a certain percentage of the claim that I'm never actually going to get. But I just tell the homeowner, hey, look, you have pretty significant damage up there in my experience. If it were my house, I would 100% let the insurance company know that some issues went down, and I would have a contractor help me compile all of that documentation to prove it. And that's ultimately what I will do. And I'll pull aerial measurements. I'll start a preliminary estimate to give us a structure to the property that I see is damaged. And then we'll get annotated photo reports together, weather reports together. It'll take me a couple hours, but I'll have a document that you'll sign that'll give me permission to do that. And then with the intention, we're going to be moving forward and doing business together. But in the event that you decide that you don't want to use us or anything like that after I've gotten your documentation done, you only owe us a documentation prep fee. It's $350. I'm not going to lock you in and force you to pay me a percentage of what the insurance company sent you. And I don't agree with that. So that's the way we operate. Do we sound like the contractor that you would like to do business with?
Yeah.
Well,
I think
and it's
most
a
people
yes
are going
or
to see
no.
that. That's very fair. I think if it did push come to shove, legally, it'd be very fair to go, hey, we've got this fee schedule for what we're doing to prepare. All these costs are reasonable and legitimate. So I am owed this. Now, are you going to, it's going to cost you more in lawyer fees than the $350 you're going to collect, right? Pretty quickly. But at the same time, that's not necessarily going to be needed the vast majority of the time, where people go, oh yeah, I'm not getting my roof done, or I'm going to have this other guy do it because he can do it cheaper. I'll pay you your $350 for all the work you did.
Yeah, because those days of old of the agreement towards like, hey, this contingency agreement, sign here, and we'll do it for whatever the insurance is going to pay. Like, that's BS. Those agreements, or it should all be burned. They don't hold up in anything.
Right.
But still so many. I mean, I was just on multi-million-dollar claims with, roofers that you would think, know their stuff, but not generating, you're the roofer, you're the expert. Why are we waiting for the insurance to tell you anything? You think they're going to tell you the truth? They're not here to do their job. We've seen that with the whole rollout of their new business model. They're not there to do their job. When they're sending an engineer on your first appointment, they're not there to do the job. They're there to deny it and to start this hamster wheel. So yeah, I love that. You're not in a blank dollar figure. It's like, your numbers, you're building that up. And if you find out there's not the coverage or whatever, well, we can go retail. We can, finance it, whatever. Yeah, you have weapons and tools. But I think that's one thing that everyone needs to really understand is like, why wait for the adjuster? You're the professional. You're the expert. Start getting your numbers, especially on that first call. Front loading helps so much because that's the first time that you're setting the reserves. Letting them know it's the roof, it's the gutters, it's window, it's interior leakage, fence. All these things, do that on your first time. And I see 9. Maybe I'm stretching it because I get really upset. But I say a big portion we have a lot of closers out there. It's really cool. I'm a salesman. I'm a closer. I, have gone through rigorous years of sales training and through a lot of no's to get to where I am. So I understand that and the brouhaha of being closers, but that's what we're finding out. There's just a ton of closers that don't want to do the work and or they can't because they're not learning. They're not investing themselves and learning how to write estimates and or finding the value of having somebody that you can pay somebody to get you an estimate like that. The quicker, the better. Yep. To know what we're fighting for instead of this blank number that we're hoping they're going to, 3 months later, get you the first estimate, a repair scope.
Right.
Like all this waiting around is old hat, and these guys need to get proactive in owning who they are. It's like, if you're going to be in this industry, if you're going to be a roofer, be proud of it. It used to be back in the day. I remember when I tell people, yeah, I'm a roofing salesman. It'd be like, oh, so you don't have a job, or you're a loser, or you didn't go to college, and we see how that all went. Everyone that that had MBAs are now roofers. Yeah,
it's crazy, right? How many guys with MBAs who are like doing the same stuff that we're doing, right? And I mean that stat, I would love to get an actual statistic of how many guys in our industry have MBAs, because
I bet that's data we could get.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah. But
or that even have degrees.
Right. It's like those TikToks and all that come out where the guy's like, I'm an entrepreneur. It's like, you're selling Mary Kay, sweetheart. Like you're not an entrepreneur. That's the way they used to put roofers. Like, because when I started in 2013, 2014, like it was the same thing. Like I'm a roofing salesman. Ooh, what unfortunate string of events led you here?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
We've all got our own.
Yeah. on the bright side, I sold used cars for a while, so nothing really gets lower than that.
So did I a long time ago.
Yeah, so when I used to meet people out at bars or something like that, and they'd be like, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I sell cars. And they're like, oh, you're one of those guys, And so when I get it on the roofing side of things, it's usually from like adjusters or something. If I'm out and about and I meet somebody, what kind of work do you do? I'm a roofer. Oh, you're on that side. Yeah.
Well, you have to think about from the adjuster perspective, right? Like everybody sitting here is like a professional. They've learned, they have a process, they do all this sort of stuff. You like to joke, but not everybody is that way. Right. And so we have this perception of like, why are these adjusters not doing the right thing? Because we're dialed in, we're doing the right thing. When you have to consider 90% of the guys that they're meeting with have done no inspection, no documentation. They're submitting claims on things that are not valid damage. They're they're not writing an estimate. They're being a jerk. They're like all these types of things. If that is what you're getting from contractors most of the time, they're going to have their wall up when they go to meet with you, and they don't know that you're a nice guy and that you're going to be helpful and that you're smart and all that. Like, so to your point earlier of going like, hey, I'm new, can you teach me? And like, just being like intentionally, I wouldn't even say just like, hey, I don't know anything, but just like being humble.
Yep.
And being like, man, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. And even if you know more than this adjuster, which, again, you guys know more than most any adjuster I've ever met. But I think that is what sets it up to where they go, okay, this is one of those 10 percenters that knows what he's doing and is going to be nice and isn't going to threaten to knock me off this roof if I don't pay for it. And,
Well, we've talked about this before. I don't know if we did on the last couple episodes, but I know you and I have spoke about it. You're crazy if you don't think the carriers have a list of contractors, public adjusters, and law firms that they're like, nope, immediate. Like if you don't think that they're compiled, like if you're a shady person in the industry, there's a lot of expletives I would have rather used there. That a blinking red light doesn't show up on their screen. Like,
well, I think it goes a couple of different ways. I think it can go, hey, we're suspecting that these guys are doing vandalism, right? It can be,
oh yeah, there's that version.
Go ahead and deny.
Ahead
and deny these guys because they're just going to drop it and go knock some other doors and sell somebody else, and they're going to abandon their customers. So yeah, let's go ahead and deny it and see what happens. But I think on the flip side, you've got these guys send us a photo report and an estimate, and a definition of damage and, all
the
this
price
stuff
is always
cited or
reasonable
whatever,
and-
like, they justify all their costs or whatever, and they don't miss. They don't lose. So we can spend more money, we can spend more time trying to fight these guys, or just let's pay it and move on to the other guy, and we'll.
I mean, it's a risk assessment, right?
Yeah.
I know if Cam sends me great stuff all the time and Taylor sends me poor stuff all the time, you're in a database, regardless of whether you think you are or you're not. And I know if I pull up 123 Main Street and Cam's on it, I'm gauging my own risk and going, that's a risk I'm going to take. This isn't worth a long-term fight. Let's just pay that one. Taylor, on the other hand, might be the opposite, and I can say, I'm going to fight this tooth and nail because he's more than likely going to give up, or that homeowner's not going to want to go to litigation, or we've
that
read
$20,000 claim is going to cost me $0, or it's going to cost me
under the
a couple $100 to send an adjuster out.
So that's the carriers are constantly assessing risk, and that's how they determine whether they're going to pay for anything. It's not the dollar amounts are relevant, right? It is all about the assumed risk of saying I concur with this or I don't, because you're setting a standard and you're creating this predetermined trajectory for claims in the future by allowing certain things to happen. Right now, they're playing a really good game. It's just we're in the ebb side of this ebb and flow. The contractors are.
Yeah.
We'll figure out the contractors will figure out their new cool thing. And I say this all the time, and I know everybody gets tired of me hearing. They're going to figure out the new cool thing to over leverage the carriers. They'll win for 12 to 18 months. And then the carrier's going to go, cool, we're done playing that game. And they're going to shift some things around. And then the contractors are going to spend 2 years figuring it out again. We're just in that part of the cycle.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
What do you think that one thing is right now? And I'll give you mine. Is roofers trying to treat everything like a retail? Like, even if it's insurance, I'm seeing more and more. So it's like, even though it's an insurance still, hey, we know what our number is. Sign. This is our estimate. Now, whether the insurance is going to pay you that full dollar, that's none of my business. We do have people we could refer you to that could help you if they try and fight you on it. But I will tell you this, especially in, because at NCA, we're, $1 million and above as far as claims that we take. And it makes a huge difference. If the desk adjuster says, well, do you have a signed agreement? And it's like, there's the number on it. Boom. That makes things go way butter smooth instead of waiting back to see what their third party, building consultant, what his estimate's going to be.
As long as the estimate's reasonable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And we've all done this enough. And if you're sitting on a claim representative side, PA or lawyer, you see enough of these to go, all right, dude, you don't need $2,800 a square for this thing. You know what I mean? You see those. And as long as your stuff is reasonable, I couldn't agree with you more.
And that goes into, I learned this from Cal Spoon when I went through his little boot camp. He's been a mentor of mine. I love him. But talking about your body of work will speak, like your consistency, how you do everything from your inspection, your photo documentation, all of that will precede you. You will know most of these people, you give it enough years that, like you were talking about, they know, oh, dang, I got him on here. Well, it's going to be a good conversation. It's not going to be negative, and they're usually pretty spot on. So it's a way more fluid ebb and flow of a process. And of course, the carrier wants to know that all that money is going to go to putting back into the building that they're insuring. So if they have an agreed amount that is reasonable, they're way more easier to stroke that check than waiting 2 years.
And they know, okay, it's going to be $1 million to solve this claim, and not, hey, they're going to try to squeeze $3 million out of this, right? Like, it is what it is, but just having that surety of knowing this is what it's going to cost me if we approve this thing. Okay, it's not going to cost me twice that. It's not going to cost me time and a half that. And and obviously there's change orders, there's all that sort of stuff that can happen, but but also the value of the insured is their monthly or annual recurring revenue to the carrier. The dollar amount they're spitting out on claims is minuscule comparatively. So they know if they get a good contractor out there, it's a reasonable dollar amount, they pay the claim, that insured is likely to stay with them and continue to pay that tens of, especially on multi-million-dollar claims or multi-million-dollar policies, that tens of thousands of dollars in yearly premiums, right? They're keeping that by paying, right? When contractors get out there and get greedy, then it just gets messy and
That and the policyholder. You know, there's a lot of scumbag commercial property owners out there.
They see a lot of hotel owners.
Hotel,
Yeah, I've seen
apartment, multifamily, to where, and that you go up and you inspect these properties and you wonder why it's such a hard fight. It makes it such an easy work for like the engineer to go or adjuster to go up there and just take pictures of everything that's not related to the storm, to the loss, because there's tons of it.
Yeah.
Because the claim that you had that, you know, they know that's in underwriting that happened 5-10 years ago, they gave you X amount of dollars, and this is the same damn roof system that's up here. Now, what happened? And you got, you know, freaking AC units, or the what do you call it, out in the desert in Arizona, they've got those swamp coolers up there that have, you know, that are from the 80s and been disconnected, but they're still up there.
Well, because they're heavy and we don't want to move them.
Yeah, and the, you know, and the maintenance guys are the guys who are, you know, expected to do it. But yeah, the shady policyholders, you know, can ruin.
I had that on a hotel here in Nashville 3 or 4 months ago. The carrier came out and they're like, hey, we had open coverage on this a couple years ago. Everything looks the same. And we started walking around. We found that it wasn't. It was, they did an overlay of the entire roof, but they had to redeck and new ISO over half of the roof because of a fire. But at face value, just like getting up there and looking, you're like, oh, they didn't fix anything. Right. And then you start walking and you can tell the difference because the original building was built in like 1997 and had the original insulation and fiberboard and all that. And you could tell by walking on it. And then you get to the new, more stiff ISO that's only 1.5 years, 2 years old. And you're like, well, this feels different. So let's do a core sample. And once we cored it, everything was fine. But they're so used to that being the case that they're like, no, we're denying this completely. They haven't fixed anything. And, you know, you had to investigate a little bit further. What I wish the carriers would be able to do is what pharmacies have been able to do. I can't go to Walgreens and buy Sudafed and then go to CVS and buy Sudafed and then go to Walmart pharmacy and buy Sudafed because it's all tracked. With anything sold within a pharmacy is tracked. I can't go get a prescription filled and then you remember they used to hand jam the prescriptions. Like you can't go to another pharmacy without them seeing your entire prescription history now. Why they can't do that on the carrier side?
Well, they do. They have their Lexus
do on
Nexus
claims
system,
history.
That'll show the claims history. It won't necessarily show
the outcome of it.
Correct. Yeah, whether or not the repairs were made, or
we're seeing more and more. We just had.
I thought. I'm sorry. I thought the Lexus Nexus stuff was only for claims that went to litigation. Oh, they can pull.
Yeah, every claim that's ever filed.
Auto, home.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't
So
know
you've got your whole like insurance profile, just like a credit profile. That shows, hey, this person's burnt down their house 3 times in the last 10 years. Maybe don't write them a policy, or whatever. Like this person keeps getting speeding tickets and crashing their car.
I was unaware of that.
Yeah.
The more you know.
You learn
So you
something
can't
new
just like
every day.
switch carriers and be like, oh yeah, you don't know about the last 3 accidents I was in.
Interesting.
You can try, but then when they return that rate, you're like, good Lord, it's like they know.
Yeah, they do.
We're seeing a lot more inspections after the rebuild.
I wish.
Thank God. Like, why are they not? You would think they would have enough money, manpower to do pre-inspections before they even write the policy and accept years and years of premiums.
Again, assessing risk.
But they're
Well, that can be a drive-by a lot of times.
It can be that. It
They
can
do a
just
lot of
say, hey,
Google
Mr.
Earth.
Customer,
They
like
do a lot of Google Earth stuff.
we'd be happy to write you this, contingent approval on an inspection report from a contractor. Most do it for free. We just need some photos of the roof.
Yeah, we see it on like with mortgages attached, which there usually are on large commercial properties, where they're doing the final inspection, and then they also all right, we see your estimate. We want to see proof of when you started and when you ended the build. We want to see invoices, and you can, and so many guys get so flipped out. Well, they don't need to know how much I'm making, but it's none of their business. Like they're not. Well, they actually don't give a shit. They just don't. You can redact all that information out, but they want to see, and it could be as simple as pictures. The first, and if you don't have them, then you're wrong. The day that material got dropped, picture, meta.
That's really hard to do.
Yeah, I know it's so hard. They don't have.
There was a photo app.
I'm busy. All right.
Yeah.
and I don't have time.
I'm
for these
busy
shenanigans.
knocking. I'm closing.
I'm dealing with this, Amy's parents and who are going to watch this. Bill, go take pictures.
They're gonna watch this.
Oh, of course they will. They love me.
Oh,
Anyway, they don't. But here's the thing. They just got hit by that wind event. I was just telling you guys before we started recording. And their barn's about to fall over. And the carrier wrote for like 6 studs.
nice.
That's it. Like, I'm serious. Like, if you walked out, this barn's leaning. In the barn is a bunch of tools and his motorcycle and all this other stuff. I'm like, Bill, you need to go out and just do a video. Just walk through real fast. Because in the event that you wake up tomorrow morning and that barn collapsed, they're going to go, well, what was in here?
Yep.
And you guys have a certain dollar amount of personal property coverage that's included in that separate structure.
Yep.
If it falls down, you want to make sure that at least you have something to substantiate the 2 motorcycles, the 4-wheeler, the tools, the whatever you have in there.
Yeah.
If you don't, and something's completely and utterly destroyed and you can't like say, oh, well, that's what this was, they're not going to pay for it. So just go out and take the video. And we were up there. We picked Cooper up on Sunday coming back from northern Indiana. And I asked Amy's mom, I was like, did Bill go out and take the video? She said, no, I'll go do it today. And I'm like, it's been a week. Like, you gotta get out there.
Yep.
Got to get out there.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest things that I push.
But sometimes just doing that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I try and throw videos out on Facebook when there's storms come and like go out and take freaking pictures.
Well, I did. You remember when we had last May, we had that tornado out at my parents' house.
Oh yeah.
And we were house sitting for them.
Oh, the
And I
trees.
was
And
like,
then the
hey,
tornado
here-
actually
I was like,
came.
here's
Yep.
how to like take these photos ahead of time or whatever. You know, I went and took like 50 photos
And
around
then
their
you're like,
house.
we almost
And then
died.
30 minutes later, like there's all these trees down. And,
Yeah,
the
people don't
neighbor's
realize-
house is gone.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, people don't realize the importance of that. There's a ton of free apps out there for your personal property inventory and stuff like that. I mean, those are really, really good things to have.
And even if you don't use an app, your iPhone and your Android have
Google
cloud
Backup,
cloud
something.
photos.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
make a folder, be like
Yep.
house stuff, and be done with it.
Yep.
well, guys, I want to get into watching a clip that we found this week
Do it.
and get you guys' response, reaction here to it.
Screw it into the floor. Make sure you get one landing. Now you're safe. You're not gonna fall. Now you can screw off all around. And then when you're done, you just simply pull it up, put your screw back in, and move on, screw yourself in again, and you can slowly do a whole roof like that. That's the best way.
So he's got the little strap on the end of his tool belt,
Yeah.
No, OSHA doesn't live here.
zips himself down.
That's why. I mean, I've never seen it, but
I guess if you feel like you're about to slip off the roof, you're like, all right. Zzz.
yeah, that's the biggest thing that I would be concerned about, because anytime I've ever slipped on a roof, I was not going to have time to,
Screw yourself down.
get myself screwed down to the roof. You know.
I've seen guys on metal roofs with magnets.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
they've got
Those heavy-duty
the
magnets.
cougar paws with the magnets in the
Oh, do they
bottom
really?
of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, my own thing with that though is, we get insurance carriers, to pay for
Fasteners.
because for fasteners, just you're reusing the same hole that you just wallered out. I think there may be a manufactured issue going on there.
Well, and the thing, if there was only a product out there that was designed to keep you safe on
Like
a
a harness?
roof,
If there was only
Something
a
like-
There's like
governmental
6 different
something like that,
products.
or even something that goes over the top of the roof.
If there was
that
only
you
an
can hook
agency that
to.
provided all
kinda
the
like
safety
that.
data.
Something like that.
You know?
A metaphorical goat.
Yeah, just something like that.
Have you
$1
seen
million
those pictures
idea.
of the guys? They're like, "What are you anchored to?" And the guy goes, "It's my wife." And they go, "What?" And
Oh,
then they
yeah.
walk around the front, and his 2-ton wife's just sitting there with the belt
That's
around her
funny.
waist, and she's just sitting on. I mean, hanging out in the lawn, and she's holding.
It's not her first time doing
That's
that.
better than that.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
just-
yeah.
I've had one
I've had guys
State
tie
Farm
up to pickup
adjuster
trucks.
meeting where they did the cannon, shoot the rope over the house. I've seen the videos of it, but I've had one like that where they shoot the rope over, tie it to a tree in the front yard. I don't hate it. Whatever
it's just like
keeps
with
them
rappelling
safe.
and stuff, or belaying.
Yeah.
Yep.
Using the wife as an anchor. I mean, I guess our wives are supposed to be our anchors, right?
I like
See
what
what you
you
did
did
there.
there. It's nicely done.
Well done.
Yeah, I'm gonna see you tie off the jewels and
Yeah,
off the roof and send her over.
Well, and that's the big difference between rappelling and anchoring onto a safety harness, right? A light person can belay you.
Sure.
That's
Leverage,
Not,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's not happening here.
No. But I've seen that one
That's
too, where the
crazy.
guy, I think is an Allstate adjuster. He goes and
When he's
shoots
got
the
his
cannon
helmet on and all this stuff.
and it puts his cougar paws on, and then ends up not even getting on the roof. Just does all of that, and like, oh, well,
Never mind.
Never
Yeah.
mind.
Well, and the thing is, most of these, especially if they're like a Seek Now, Ladder Now, Hancock or something like that, when they have to bust out the steep climbing gear,
They get paid
normally
extra.
get paid a little bit extra.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
I've had a few of the Seek Now guys that'll pull their goat out or something like that, and then they'll throw it over the ridge, and then they'll do their whole inspection without using it.
But they took a
then
picture
they'll
of
take
it.
a picture and
Yeah.
they'll,
Oh, I've seen that.
they'll be
plenty of
on it,
times.
and and
Well,
then they're like, all right, let me.
And some of them have
I
time
had
frame
one
thresholds
you could
too.
get to like 90% of the roof from like a fairly low slope, like easy walkable. You like, but then there's like 10% of it that was like 16-12, right? You got to go on this outside edge, and you could even see most of the 16-12 just like looking over the, over the edge. And he got his goat out there and took his pictures or whatever, because he gets paid twice as much,
Right.
And I'm just like standing up there taking a picture of him.
Right.
On the 412 up top.
Improperly invoicing the carrier.
right.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, they ended up denying that one, actually.
Really?
I think so. I think this is a really good opportunity for a disclaimer.
Disclaimer: don't do that.
Don't do that. And also stop
yeah.
taking videos of your crews showing off the roof on a pitch and they're not tied off and they're
Hey,
not.
don't freaking call me out, bro.
Look, man, the
Freaking
amount
call
of,
me out,
the
man. I've
amount
been on
of
my marketing
TikToks
team big
and-
time. I'm like, oh,
My MO, and I'm sure I made some of those mistakes, but somebody early on like kind of told me, "Don't be an idiot," and in that particular case, it took.
Mhm.
And so when I would take my photos and videos on the roof, whether it was social media or just documentation during the build or whatever, I always made sure not to get my crew in there because they didn't have harnesses.
Yeah.
Unless it was real steep, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's 12 or 10,
Yeah.
maybe up. But like they wouldn't have them on. And so and then there's also something we're going to get into on one of our other episodes, the legal status of these people working on the roofs, and is it beneficial to go take a bunch of pictures of individuals that may get them in some kind of trouble?
So we're gonna kill the podcast, get canceled after the next episode.
No. I mean, I think we can have a discussion around it.
I agree.
I'm not a legal expert or whatever, but I think it's an important
Yeah, I agree.
topic.
Yeah.
So we'll
No
talk
doubt.
about that on another episode.
no doubt.
Well, we're at the point in the podcast we're going to talk about one of our handy dandy tools.
Oh, let's see it.
Yeah.
It's a mouse.
I like
tool.
new tools.
It's a mouse tool.
You actually have.
It's
actually
bad. You
have
know
this
you're a
tool.
roof nerd. Follow people on social media that showcase new products that come to the market in the roofing industry.
I've always been just a nerd for tools, and like I use every project as an excuse to like, oh, I need that other kind of router
Yeah.
because the router that I have doesn't.
Yeah. That's my
do
favorite
this
part about
doesn't match.
conferences and trade shows is like going to see all those new
God,
little
me too.
things. I'm
Yep.
like, that's cool. I'll never buy it, but it's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I sent you those little foam deals for holding the shingles on the roof.
My guys have been using the piss out of them.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Good to hear.
Those
well,
are pretty cool.
Here's a little tool, and you've got one of these, but you don't have the new one
Yeah.
with the magnets.
No,
in
I
it.
don't, man.
Yep. So the BEI roof gauge, shameless plug here, has single ply mill gauge, steel gauge, aluminum gauge, organic felt gauge, which there's nothing else out there. It's a black piece of tar paper. You can't tell how thick it is unless you have a gauge for it. And then the decking gaps. And this is one that I was kind of surprised to get some pushback on. People are like, I got a tape measure. I don't need a gap gauge or whatever. It's like, well, do you ever get pushback where they go, well, that's not quite half an inch, because the angle of the
Shot.
tape measure
Yep.
and it's
Yeah.
closer to the camera and blah, blah, blah. It's like, this thing's half an inch wide. If it fits in that gap, therefore that gap is at least half an inch wide.
Yep.
Just making it completely dummy proof, not only for the guy using it, but for the guy who's paying or making coverage decisions based on what that picture shows.
Yep.
So they can go, yes, it definitely was that. Manager, don't get mad at me for paying that thing.
Yep.
The hail gauge, which I've gotten a bunch of pictures from you. documenting damage. I've even got some guys from Georgia sent us some pictures of actual hail that fell.
Oh,
sitting
that's
on the
cool.
hail gauge. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And then the magnets. What do you use magnets for?
Like in life?
In roofing documentation.
If, finding out what am I on? Aluminum, steel, picking up tools that fall.
I don't know if that's going to be that helpful. There's little magnets. They're itty bitty.
But yeah, just quickly, is this aluminum or is this steel?
Yep.
Love it.
And then
Yeah, I love mine.
Oh,
We use
I
it a
use
lot.
mine all the time.
Yeah.
And we come across, big issues with people that, like Hague engineers. We just had one where his gauge was used for so long. He even admitted it on audio recording that, I've had this thing for like 20 years. And it was off. Like we're gauging 24 gauge,
yeah.
and they're gauging 29. And we
Jeez.
don't
Not off by a
big
little.
difference.
Yeah, $1 million. It's literally $1 million difference, and
Jeez.
and then they send their second adjuster out who
Was
went
that
from-
the one I was talking to Alan about?
Yeah. And then they went down and got with their next gauge was 26, and we're like close.
You're getting there.
So we literally went out and bought every gauge that's out there,
Yeah.
and they were all shooting 24. And we're like, something's wrong with your tools, just like any tool, it gets worn out, especially metal things that you're cramming into tight
Right.
spaces, gonna get bored out, wallered out. So it's funny, having the right tools handy. I love. This is the new one, right?
Yep, that's coming. So, it's here, but we'll talk about
take
that.
This, or is this a prop?
Well, that one's a
No,
prop,
you should
but
take
I'll
it.
get you one.
I will.
take it.
I'll get you one. But the exciting news, I am working on right now, getting this in with some distributors. So if you are one of those distributors that we're not in a conversation yet, they should probably get a hold of me.
Yep.
And that way all the roofers coming in their shop can pick one of these up and elevate their documentation tools.
I love it. I use mine.
And it's thick because
Yeah.
there's some other ones out there that are more like a business card
Right.
type
Yeah,
look.
the
And
plastic.
I don't dislike it. I keep the one in my wallet from the other guys, and I still use it. I actually had to use it the other day because I wasn't sure if there was any flashing between some hardy, and so I'll use that
slip it in there
and then slip it in between the joint and then get a video of that and say, hey, if there's flashing present in here, I can put this card in and it'll slide completely out and not get stopped by anything. But if they didn't install it properly, when I put this in and slide it down, it's going to catch on something. And so I'll hit play, and then if it catches, I'm like, yep, at least this elevation was not installed to spec, or at least this one piece. We'll check a few more to verify and substantiate again, and then kind of rock. So yeah, but they're awesome.
Yeah, and I'm gonna love this because I usually order off Amazon these that forensic detectives use for documenting
like
evidence,
blood splatters.
Yeah, and they it's like the black and white, but they're plastic, and I break them all the time because I keep it zip on that little extender thing. I'm glad this one has a loop, and this one is made of metal, so it's not going to break. It's important showing scale, other than just your hand, and having actual measurements in there.
Well, and that's another one where guys are going, well, I've got a tape measure. What is that doing that a tape measure doesn't? It's like, well, it photographs a little bit better, especially we made that black with the white lettering for, it'll work on shingles and all that sort of stuff. But if you're on a white commercial system, it shows up. It doesn't get blown out in the sunlight and all that sort of stuff to get good documentation.
Y'all need to get some magnifying glasses made. Little 10x. I use that probably every day.
Can you take a picture through it?
You should
Yeah,
just
I
walk
do.
around with a monocle
With a top hat, handing out peanuts.
Definitely have to start wearing a vest so you can put them in the
You put the little
appropriate
monocle
pockets.
pocket.
Yeah.
You make it and I'll use it.
All right.
It just has to be 10x. I like using. It just illustrates, especially when someone wants to say, "Oh, there's no penetration." I'm like, really? Just because you can't see it doesn't mean there's not So let's get a little closer. And I take pictures of engineers and adjusters using. It's funny when I bust mine out, they're like, "Oh, that's so cool." I'm like, "You don't have one?" I'm like, no. I'm like, that's so weird. Like, why wouldn't you have one? Where's your thermal gun? Like, why don't you have tools to do your job? And I'll end up taking pictures of them using my tools. And then when they don't show up, like, why was that penetration? Like, we're going through it right now. I think it's Brothers Mutual coming back like, yeah, well, the engineer said there's no penetration, so we're not covering it. Well, your exclusion's not written that way for one, but let me show you this. So why is this photo not showing up in the report? It's him using my microscope looking at that actual penetration. It hit right on the rib and bent it. I mean, it's 4-inch hell and broke. Wow. It broke.
That's really weird how you guys withheld that from your report.
Yeah.
Surely it was by accident.
Why was that?
Yeah.
The thing that changes your position.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing again too. Like understanding, if an engineer's there, he's not there to do any good. So you better be ready and have all your ducks in a row to fight this thing, and have more documentation than they have. And again, that's one thing I'm going to be testing. A/B testing is these new audio recording devices that has AI built in,
Plod,
that can differentiate.
Speakers
and stuff.
Yeah. We use Plods, and they are the most amazing.
Is that the one they also make it a wristband too?
Yeah, they have a wristband
necklace.
I'll show you.
Yeah, I'm gonna get one of those.
I've got mine in my briefcase. I'll show it to you.
Because going back to what we're talking about, just having a conversation. Let's get the barrier broken down, and it's not like you're lying. I want I like just about everyone that I meet, and I just talk about everything. Sometimes other than what we're actually looking at. And you get them comfortable and confident. They're like, man, this guy's cool. And they start talking, and they don't even start and then you start interjecting questions about this, or, oh man, that was a big one. That is about, matches the damage on that soft metal. Yeah, man, that was a beater or whatever. Like, get them to admit and to put their foot in their mouth. And that's another thing too. Every engineer we come across, cosmetic exclusion engineer, it's just funny how they come in and their report says, nope, that's, wear and tear, old damage, whatever. But we end up getting them fully approved. And you just wonder why. Are every one of you engineers
why are we going through this?
Yeah.
Bull crap.
Right. Well, it's because 9 out of 10 guys that they're dealing with are not getting them approved.
Correct.
They're able to put up that roadblock.
Or they're going to be like, well, the engineer said it must be fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and for a lot of these desk adjusters, to them it is. Right? To them, the extent of their knowledge is only the things that have come across their desk. Yeah. And so if 80% of the engineer reports that come across their desk say wear and tear, normal, whatever, that's their foundational knowledge base. So that's all they're going to know.
Yep. But also too that, really seeing the proof in the pudding that they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them.
Also that.
And when you're working every
scarcity mindset.
Yeah, like they do nothing but 100%. They work for the carrier. So you think, and they're feeding them well. They get paid well and they get fed well. So the moment you start doing your job like the way you were trained to do, which again, most engineers that are on a roof, they don't know anything about roofs. It's almost monthly educating the engineer on like what we're actually standing on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny that they can make those big changes in someone's life, like denying something. And I don't care if it's a multifamily, a big commercial. I mean, that affects so many people. We had a client almost losing his damn mind because he opened and filed 3 claims on 3 of his multifamily properties. They immediately dropped him. So then, because he had open claims, he couldn't get insurance anywhere in state. So he had to go find some of the crummiest. Instead of paying $100 a door, he had 300 doors in each complex.
Wow.
He was paying $800 a door. And he's like, Cam, my investors, my guys are asking me like, do I even know what the hell I'm doing anymore? I've had a great track record. Now we're bleeding. We're hemorrhaging. He's like, I don't know. Am I going to have to close, like just sell for what I can get for him and be done with it? He's like, the stress and everything is killing me. And this is one that was a night and day. Like, dude,
Yeah.
you have penetrations, you have news coverage all over, you have before, during the storm, all of that evidence, and they're still sending out every roadblock. And it affects people, and it affects people that live in those properties. A lot of them, can't just go jump out and afford to go moving. If they got leaks continually coming in, and it's affecting their health, and they have kids or health issues, they can't just go jump and go get another apartment, because what does that cost? First month's, last month's security deposit,
moving truck, time off work.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot. So that's what I love, solving big, hairy problems, because they do affect so many people in a positive way. When they go the way they're supposed to go. But yeah, it's have the tools, and yeah, like you were saying, make sure you're in a state, that you're able to, record without asking. And, in all reality, if you're here to do a job, you shouldn't have a fear of like, hey, I'm going to just video record this through my glasses and also audio, if that's okay with you. If it's not okay with them, that's clearly going to tell you everything you need to know. And how you need to operate and carry.
Just do like the carriers do. It's for quality and training purposes.
Yeah, for sure. Because in every engineer report we see, and why we're able to win is because they're fighting so hard to not say the thing.
That's obvious right in front of all of us.
And so they put their foot in their mouth so often in all those reports, and being a lot of them copy and pasted because they're overworked so much. They've got so many claims that they're just trying to
templated.
There's the executive summary. 9 pages of templated, this is what hail looks like, and this is what it does, and and then the findings at the end. Like you can just read the first paragraph and the last paragraph, all the rest of it's junk.
So learning how to read those, use the language back to them, I think is huge. But yeah, it's funny when you bring those contradictions up. So many times we find victories just through just saying like, you guys have really put yourself in a pickle here. You really want to stand on this, or are you really going to make us go to the next level? And it can be fun, but it's very frustrating. The rigmarole we have to go through just for the right thing to be done. And we see that across not just our country, but the world. It's why is it so hard just to do the right thing?
The more you know.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode. Cam, I appreciate you coming in.
So glad you're here, dude.
Being on
Me
here
too.
with
Thanks,
us.
Love you, buddy.
Love you, man.
And we got matching wristbands on. Forever, baby.
Hey,
be like Bubba.
We have matching wristbands too.
Yep.
Dude, look at you, Cam, coming in here, doubling down.
I even forgot my watch back home. Idiot. But I'm here.
Awesome. Well, it was a great episode.
I love Nashville.
All right. We will see you guys next time.
Peace.